Welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA show. I'm your host, Cathryn Naiker. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Today, I have two very awesome guests joining me. One, he's an actor, lifelong Raptors fan, and friend to the show. You know him from all your TurboTax commercials, all playoff season long. It's Matthew Brown. And along with Matthew, I've got Raptors Republic's own Confederacy of Dunks host, Freddie Rivas. How you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Like, I love the TurboTax, off the top. It's like, you gotta let them know, man.
Yeah, man. That's me asking people what their third period, second half plans look like and get their taxes done. But yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. I got my Norman Powell, Understand the Grind sweater on.
Absolutely.
For buckets. I got my tea, sponsored by Timmy's this morning. So unofficially, but I'm good.
Yeah. And Matthew, for all our listeners based in Toronto, you've got an awesome play that you're starring in. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I do. The play is called Is God Is. It is running at Canadian Stage. It is a co-production with Canadian Stage, Obsidian Theatre, and Necessary Angel. And it is a violent revenge story. Spaghetti Western meets Afro-punk meets hip-hop. And without spoiling the entire plot of the play, two twins get burned in a fire. Their mother comes to them with one simple request after she was also burned in the same fire, and her request is make your daddy dead.
Whoa.
And that's the plot of the play. So come out and check us out, Canadian Stage. Our first preview is tonight, May 6th. We open on May 11th and we close on May 22nd. Get your tickets now.
Amazing. At Canadian Stage, I imagine.
At Canadian Stage, Berkeley Street Theater.
Amazing.
Hell of a request.
Yeah, right? Make your daddy dead.
Let them know,
Wow.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, man, that's quite the log line, That's quite That's amazing. I'm definitely going to try and come out and see it. Awesome. All right, guys, let's get into basketball. On this show, we start with NBA and then we move into Raptors. The last 2 weeks, I was like flipping the script because there was so much going on with the Raptors, but we're back to the regular format. And we got to dive in to this Golden State Warriors Memphis Grizzlies series. Are you like, I want to get into my abolish the conferences feelings like already right off the top, because to me, this series and whoever faces, no disrespect, but whoever faces the Phoenix Suns after this, to me, these are going to be the best series of the entire thing. Like, I think both of these are going to be better than whatever the finals ends up being. Maybe that's just me. But I want to talk about these flagrant fouls. So in game one, Draymond Green got the flagrant 2, was ejected from the game. And then in game 2, Dillon Brooks was also immediately ejected from the game and now has a 1-game suspension after his foul on Gary Payton Jr. the second. I don't know, what do they call him? Junior the second. I think it's the second. People are calling them different types of gloves, mittens and stuff. It's just terrible for the guy. But anyway,
fingerless gloves.
There's been a lot of debate about what is a flagrant foul, what serves an ejection, what serves a suspension, and what is quote unquote playoff basketball. How much more physical can playoff basketball be? So let's start with the Draymond Green foul first, because that happened first in game one. Let's start with me, Matthew. Have you seen it? What did you think of it when it first happened? How did you feel about it afterwards? Because I felt like the narrative kept shifting around it after the foul itself actually occurred. What are your thoughts?
I'll be completely honest. The Draymond one I haven't seen, so it's harder for me to comment on the Draymond one.
You're busy. Find a daddy to kill, apparently.
yeah. I was busy watching the people die in the play. But I do know it's interesting to see how those kind of fouls and those kind of plays can galvanize a team and then make a team more motivated and seem stronger, right? Because it was like after that, Golden State to my knowledge anyway, from what I was following along on Twitter and following along the score, kind of took control of the game, found a way to take game one. Am I right about that? Yeah. And so like that kind of physicality being in the game, and then someone getting, they get the suspension, but they took the win. So how does Golden State really feel about that? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they probably take that trade-off any day. So yeah, the Draymond one's a little bit more tricky for me to comment on. The Dylan Brooks one I did see, but I know we'll get to that later.
Okay, sure.
So yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Cathryn, so you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Freddie, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I've thought about this a bunch, and I feel like I followed the Twitter roller coaster, and initially, I guess, I wasn't vocal about it, but was sort of part of the group of like, is this really like a flagrant 2? Then I saw the angle where, it does seem like perhaps there was attempt at the ball a little bit, but he really followed through on the face. So there's the first piece of contact where Draymond just like open hand smacks the guy in the forehead, like pretty hard. And then the follow-up of yanking his jersey midair is roughly as dangerous as you get in basketball. So to me, it's the 1-2 punch of kind of like, there's all sorts of unnecessary there. Does that warrant a flagrant 2? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sort of on the side of like, Van Gundy said before, we're legislating toughness out of the game. I think that's a fair point, but also on the other side, and again, I know we'll get to the Gary Payton thing, but it's kind of like, do we want to walk this line of like, for the sake of like machismo and toughness, like to put players like health at extreme risk? Like, these guys work their whole lives, and a horrific injury can derail a player's career, can derail a playoff team's hopes. And yeah, I think I'm sort of on the side of like, I watch a lot of soccer too. So I think like the first hit was a yellow and the follow-up was a yellow. So I think it's a red ultimately.
Right.
And it's a soft red kind of, but at the same time, you smack the guy in the face. So stop there. But, he didn't stop there. And, yanking a guy, like, I mean, I'm fully like team airborne. Don't mess with a guy. Like, he just can't defend himself. I think it's much more debatable when, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit of Raptors, but like, flying elbows and that sort of thing, I think is much more, I don't know, tricky. I think it's like a non-starter. Like, when someone's in the air, just bad things happen. So in that sense, I ultimately am for the, I'm for the toss. Even if it's not, as egregious as some of the stuff we saw in the 90s, right? But we're not in the 90s. We know more now. We've changed. We're trying to be better.
Yeah, the very interesting thing for me around Draymond Green is that it was confusing because on the broadcast they go to Steve Javie, and then Steve Javie is like flagrant 1,
right.
and then the refs keep reviewing it, and they take a long time, and it gives the crowd enough time to start chanting like, get him out, or kick him out. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but they were chanting to get him kicked out of the game. And I actually do think that had a sway on the refs, because it was like a really hot Memphis crowd, but also they're looking at the video and they're like, well, there is some context for it. And then later you see the replays more with him hitting the face. It was more the jersey grab that we were looking at initially. I feel like him hitting the face came out after the fact, and then you feel the commentators trying to like take a step back and explain it. And so I think that leaves the audience in a weird place, right? And this happens all the time in the NBA, where it's like you don't know which way a call is going to go. It goes a way you don't expect, and the broadcasters are left trying to make sense of what happened. And it was one of those calls where you felt the broadcasters trying to make sense of it after the fact. And so I think that helps shape the fan narrative around it. Yeah. And then you see all these replays afterwards. But to me, what I am going to consider a historic moment in sports broadcast history is Draymond Green going on his podcast immediately after the game.
I know.
To talk about it. No one's ever done this before.
That's how the game has changed in this era, right?
Absolutely. Like, and on his Twitter, he's hashtagging new media. Like, this is the new media. This is the new.
I love Draymond.
This is the new era. I'm going to get ahead of my narrative. I'm going to tell people that me grabbing his jersey was my way of helping his fall and not a malicious intent on my part. And this is how I'm going to ensure that I'm not going to get suspended, although I don't think that was on the table. And this is how I'm going to ensure that I'm, doing my best to ensure that I'm refereed in a particular way and that I'm proud of my toughness and this is who I am. Nobody's done this on such a platform immediately after a game. And Dylan Brooks doesn't have a high profile podcast. And I don't think he has a strong social media presence generally. And so he's not getting ahead of his narrative. And this is just a wild it is a new era of sports and sports media and how players continue to control their narrative. And that is directly impacting this playoff series.
I feel like Dylan Brooks needs some help from Canada. Like he needs a Canada council grant.
I don't know. I think Dylan Brooks maybe he should have played hockey, honestly.
He's rough, man. Like he's definitely, yeah.
He might have lost that a little bit of that Canadian support when he came on our court and was yelling "and one" at Pascal Siakam.
Yes,
yeah. The North remembers Dylan Brooks.
You know what? There's a really random video that the Uninterrupted posted, and it's Dylan Brooks and it's Bane and it's one other guy on the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm blanking on who it was. And they're talking about how they got into a fun time in Toronto. And they were like, oh, no, don't talk about what we did in Toronto. And they're all smiling and giggling like they got up to some shit in Toronto. And then Dylan Brooks was just like, oh, we had dinner at this restaurant and it was nice. And he was like trying to dial it back. And I'm like, I want to do this. Like, what did they do?
Things got crazy at Libretto.
Yeah, I want to do this thing. Like, what did they get up to in Toronto? Wrong answers only. We just like.
The thing is if we did wrong answers only, we'd probably get like all the right answers.
We might.
Of what they actually did.
Yeah,
and I feel like Toronto. I think you were gonna say it, Freddie. Toronto nightlife is undefeated.
It is.
It really is. If you got money in this city, man, come on.
Seriously. And players treat, like we hear it all the time, like especially the American players, although, there's some Canadian players there, but like you always hear it. It's like, Canada feels like you're in, it feels like you're in this like lawless land, I think, for a lot of players. And they come here and they're like, whatever, this is like, this isn't the US. Like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, even though we're absolutely not in Vegas.
Totally. Yeah. No, the Dylan Brooks one though, that one I saw.
Yeah. Let's talk about Dylan Brooks's foul. Cool. So it was early in the game. He hit Gary Payton Jr. the second. Really, it makes him sound like the fourth when I say it back to back. He hit him really hard. He now has an elbow fracture and he's out for an undetermined amount of time. Steve Kerr, he actually spoke during the broadcast and said it was a dirty play. He doubled down on that after the game and said, there's a quote unquote code in the NBA and he broke that code. Gary Payton, Steve Kerr did a really good job of highlighting this in a way that I don't think is highlighted enough. Like this guy came through the G League. This is a contract year for him. He's fought really hard to be in the NBA. He's finally like a starter, and now this happens, and how much this impacts careers really. And even though he's like the junior of a very famous NBA player, and like financially, I'm sure he's fine, but still, it's just like you're impacting someone's career in a significant way. And it's just like you were saying earlier, Freddie, it's like it's in the air. Like you just can't. I mean, you can't hit players in the head, like regardless, but when you hit somebody in the head in the air, it completely throws them off. He had a really terrible landing, and now he has this injury. And Dylan Brooks is suspended for a game, but they've lost Gary Payton indefinitely. So, yeah, it's tough. I definitely think it deserved the flagrant 2. I actually do think it deserved the suspension, but it's weird because it's like, because we know he's injured, I think it's like we're looking at it more seriously than we're looking at Draymond's foul on Brandon Clark. And it's like, should fouls be the same and suspensions be the same regardless of whether it leads to an injury or not? Because I feel like Brandon Clark could have easily just been like 6 inches away from an injury. You know what I mean? Like, like it didn't end up in an injury, fortunately, but it easily could have been. So it's like, should we treat it the same, or is it okay to review it after the fact and be like, no, this guy's injured and therefore we're going to suspend you. But maybe if he wasn't injured, you wouldn't be suspended a game.
I feel like when it comes to Dylan Brooks, he's had some pretty, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's had some questionable ones in the past go against him in terms of flagrants.
Yeah.
And then you also factor in the thing that really bothered me about that one wasn't just the hit in the head. The hit in the head was bad, but you could make the argument he was going for the ball. The ball was already well on its way up, but he's trying to do his best to go after the ball, to do all of this stuff. Okay, you make that argument for me. The problem that I have with he grabbed not just he turned him, right? Like you see him grab him on his hip and turn him, then he gets him in the head. And I can understand that, like, it's the similar thing that hockey had, and really that like football had as well, in the NFL, that you want to make a play, make them feel you, right? Make your fouls count.
Yep.
And okay, fair, but once you start to get into like turning someone's body, hitting them in the head, like, and you've done this type of thing before, that to me constitutes the suspension more than the injury, right? Because if you were to make that argument, every single time a player gets injured, you'd have people, there'd just be people out of the game, and not everything. For as irritated as I was, to take it to the Raptors for a second, when Scotty Barnes was out with that ankle injury, and I thought he was done for the series. Thank God he's 20-nothing years old, and he's still a mutant, like he's Wolverine.
Yeah,
and
honestly,
his body can heal.
He even said that. He's like, I got young bones. I'm like, you really do, dude.
Yeah, And for as much as I hated that was like careless at best, but he was making a play. He was playing the game. He's playing ball. Yeah. He stepped on his foot.
For sure.
Yeah. Was I frustrated by it? Sure. Should he have been suspended? Should it even been a flagrant? Probably not. But the fan in me was like, I want a flagrant. It was a flagrant. You know what I mean? But you grab somebody in the air, turn them, and hit them in the head? No. Because even if he just hits them in the head, there's a chance he doesn't fall that way. It's grabbing him and taking him off of his axis that has him, and then getting hit in the head and being disoriented, that has him falling in that way and really hurting himself. And yeah, like Kerr is a 1,000,000% right. That really messes with the way his future trajectory could go. We don't know, right? Like we don't know now what happens to this player when he comes back. Is he the same when he comes back? The Warriors lose a rotational piece. Like yeah, I feel like it's warranted as well.
Yeah, I'm all the way with you. I'm all the way with Steve Kerr too, and I feel like he did break the code. I'll even add that I don't know if it was an air ball, but Dylan Brooks took a 3 earlier in the play, and it's sort of like jogging back. Draymond does the hit ahead, and then there's this almost I mean, sure, he's hustling, but there's this like burst of energy, and you see him kind of like, I mean, first of all, just a side point, I blame LeBron for making like the chase down block like even possible, because it's such a like. I play in a rec league, and basically, I mean, we're all older, but everyone's just like, hey, if you're leaving your feet, be careful. A, B, don't even attempt a chase down block, because like, I mean, I've seen people tear their ACLs like trying to block someone. So it's one of those things where it's sort of like, it's so reckless. And, you know, you talked about hockey, and it's sort of like the icing call. There's some similarities there where it's just such a fragile point. These careers are so fragile, especially for guys like rotation guys or G League guys.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have someone totally defenseless, turned around in the air, and it's just like, it's kind of like, what for? Like, if that's your way of showing toughness, like find a different way. Elbow the guy in the ribs. I know. I mean, like, I'm not like pro fighting, but like punch him or something. Like, you know, whatever. Get in his face. Do something when he's expecting it. And yeah, to me, it was really reminiscent of the Grayson Allen, Alex Caruso play, where it was sort of like, it was just like there was an extra bit of violence that resulted in injury. And, you know, to your question, Cathryn, like, this is another thing I'm a little bit torn on, but my only answer is sort of like context matters, reputation matters, the injury. I think, you know, we'd like to say like, hey, treat everything the same. Let's be consistent no matter what. But also the injury, it just matters. Like, you know, what happens to the guy ultimately it's going to be part of the narrative, you know, which we were talking about earlier. And I think the injury, you know, you wish it didn't matter, but it does. And yeah, the fact that he's out for the remainder of the playoffs likely is a factor. Like if he hopped back up and was like, got in his face and things were okay, you know, it wouldn't be the same. I mean, you know, I think we're
the fact that he even attempted to shoot his free throws after, I was like, that makes my elbows hurt. Just thinking about him shooting free throws after makes my elbows hurt. It's like, why are we doing this to people?
And you know what? You have to protect the fast break too. I remember that, you know, there was a Scotty dunk earlier in the season where Gabe Vincent just wildly tried to block him, and we're lucky Scotty's like didn't break his femur. Like it was a really, I mean, you know, Scotty was going full speed at the rim, and you know, he got beer soaked. But the fact that Scotty got up and was okay, I mean, I guess this is against my point, but yeah, you know, because Scotty wasn't injured, but like, yeah, if Scotty was injured, I think like Gabe Vincent's apt toss from the game, suspension.
Well, but, that's also the one though, that because I think if I'm thinking of the same play, that's one where he attempted to block him and then shoved him in the back afterwards. Is that the play? Yeah. Like when I saw that immediately, I was like, get him out of the game. What are you doing? Like,
totally.
If you enforce that, regardless of injury, I promise you less players are going to do that. And that doesn't mean that you then can't say a player is going up, they're on a fast break, and you know that you can physically grab them and stop them. I feel like you could still attempt those, but the notion of, oh, I got the block and now I'm going to shove you, you're not going to try that. You're going to think twice because you're going to know it's going to hurt your wallet and you're not going to be playing for a few days.
Yeah, well said. And, you know, I'll even say too, like, I'm not even a fan of like, you know, we had DeMar and Lowry do it all the time, but like, you know, when it's not a clear path, but when they can tell there's an advantage, they just foul. And it's sort of like that, you know, the people like the fans, everybody wants like dunks and fast breaks. So you don't want to kill that momentum of the game. And yeah, I mean, it's a delicate line. Like, you know, like Matthew was saying, you don't want to be tough and you want to be felt, but also you really have to curb that recklessness. And yeah, I feel like I'm going back on my point about like unsure about the injury, because I do think it is important to set the tone and be consistent, and you know, hit the wallet, and players will definitely think twice.
Well, I think too, like it's so difficult to be consistent about these things in basketball because everything has kind of its own circumstance around it. And
Totally.
it's just so fluid. Like it's so impossible to be absolutely consistent about everything. But I do think, you try to be as much as possible. I also think, like, if we go back to the game one thing with Draymond for a sec, it's like the refs are trying to set a precedent. Right? Like, I think if that's a flagrant one, then maybe Dylan Brooks's foul is a flagrant one, but because that was a flagrant two, they had to make Dylan Brooks's foul a flagrant two. So they're trying to set this precedent. And it's like, Freddie, what you were saying earlier about Jeff Van Gundy saying that they're legislating toughness out of the game. But also it's like the game has evolved into a smarter game. Like people are playing basketball smarter now. And that's why you see more perimeter play. That's why you see more 3-point shots and guys trying to get their 3-point percentages higher than they used to be because it's just a smarter way to play. And I think it just makes sense to move in that direction because we just know more now. Like, I don't think it's like, I think to root that in quote unquote toughness is, I know I'm a woman hosting a basketball podcast, but to me, that's toxic masculinity. I mean, it is. It's like, why is this about being tough? Like, this should be about being strategic.
Yeah, and I'll say too, like these guys are tough. I just think the game looks different. There's less post up. They're not pounding the ball.
I mean, these guys are getting hit all the time.
Yeah,
it's actually a very physical game, and they are being hit constantly.
And speed's a factor too, right? Like the game's way faster. I think defenses like are much more dynamic and there's a lot more wear and tear on guys' knees because of it.
Yeah, I mean the most fun plays on offense is when, aside from like a fast break dunk, is when the ball's moving around. Right? It's like when you get those passes and it's moving around and it hits a corner and you didn't see it coming, it's like that's when basketball is at its best. So for me, it's like I want to see that ball movement continue. I don't want to see like post ups in the paint like every freaking play like the 2000 Lakers were. Like that was every play. It was a triangle into a post up to Shaq and then a turnaround and a dunk or a hook shot. Like, and they only scored like 80 points a game.
Speaking of shoving people, Shaq would dunk on you and like pick you up and give you like the like Razor Ramon, like, you know what I mean? Like
the Razor's Edge,
Shaq
man.
Like just
hit you with the Razor's
destroyed
Edge
people.
Razor's Edge. Yeah, and Shaq would body people like in every way. But yeah,
and he was disagreeing with the calls, I think, too. If I remember correctly, but I wasn't paying too much attention to the inside guys, if I'm being honest. Also, Canadian TV, you have to stop cutting off before we get the post game. Okay. I'm sorry. Please. This could be a whole rant for me for a long time. I'll keep it brief. TSN, Sportsnet, stop showing me hockey highlights immediately after an NBA playoff game. I'm not interested. Keep the half-hour post game, and then you can show me your highlights after that, and I'm more likely to stay tuned in. Honestly, I'm more likely to leave the TV on if you give me the TNT post game.
I disagree. I want to see those curling highlights.
Stop it. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Sponsored by Scotty's.
Like, I need to know what Gushu did.
You know the name of a curler? You know the name of a curler? I can't name a curler.
Kevin Hart.
No, Kevin Hart?
No, sorry, Kevin Martin. Kevin Hart. Oh my God. No, Kevin Martin.
Man.
Actually, you know what? Kevin Hart in a curling movie could be really fun.
Oh yeah,
that'd be great.
If Kevin Hart was in a curling movie, like so many people would start curling, like the industry would boom.
Yeah, hashtag representation matters.
Yeah, look, honestly,
we gotta write that script and get that to Kevin Hart's people immediately.
No one can
do it.
No one can steal this idea.
I don't think he'd say no.
I don't think he would say no. Maybe Scotty's sponsors the film.
Yeah. Give Scotty a little cameo. We saw his Jurassic Park commercial work. Put Scotty and Gary in there, and we got it. We got ourselves a movie.
anyone watching this on YouTube, the t-shirt behind Matthew with the fake blood stain getting steamed right now. It's
I know.
amazing.
It's pretty
I'm
great,
sorry.
right? You guys
Yeah.
are getting a little inside peek at the costumes for the show.
Oh,
Wow.
it's so good.
Or that's a paid actor you've hired
To just come in and
Right? Can
flex.
you imagine? Oh yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
man.
god. Anyway, I say all this to say I absolutely love this playoff series. This is
It's
like
been
this might
good,
be my
man.
favorite series of the whole thing. It's absolutely thrilling. Memphis is putting up a bigger fight than I thought. I picked Warriors in 6 for this, which still could be true, but I don't know, man. And then if this goes to 7 and it's on the road, but I really believe in this Warriors team. Okay, I'm going to get a little sentimental here for a minute.
Okay.
I've decided I'm rooting for the Warriors because I think if they won it all, this would be one of the greatest comebacks we've ever seen in sports. And I think and there's just this part of me that really wants to see that. And maybe it's because I'm getting older, but it's like, like LeBron isn't in the playoffs this year. Kevin Durant was barely in the playoffs this year. James Harden is like not who he used to be. And aside from Chris Paul, and like if the Phoenix Suns win it all, like I would be very happy for the Phoenix Suns.
Mhm.
But really, like them and the Warriors are kind of like all that's left from this old guard, and I just I don't know, like I just want to see this amazing comeback, but also like if Chris Paul won a championship, like that would like all would feel right in the world. Which is also why I wish that was the actual finals.
You
Anyway,
know
I'm
what's
just being sentimental.
you know what's funny for me is I actually kind of love what Memphis might be able to pull off this year, and I've also thought that they've been one of the scarier teams in the NBA that no one is really talking about as much. And the part of me that would love to see them win, like I wish this was the Western Conference Finals.
Yes,
because any one of these two teams that wins a championship, I'm gonna be happy. Because I agree with you. I think there is something to the redemption story of Golden State, even though we ended up being the ones that put a dent in their dynasty. It would be pretty awesome to see them come back and be the Warriors that they were. And to be honest, I kind of feel like in this series you can see that they are. Like that old Warriors guard, I don't think is done this year. I think they might still have 2, maybe even 3 more years left of really, really good basketball. And the only thing that might stop them are the people behind them. And that's where I get excited for teams like Memphis. Phoenix is a little bit of that old guard, but Devin Booker is really young and playing really good ball.
And Ayton.
Like you got some really good people on the come up. I was talking about this the other day. Is it going to be so many people, including the Raptors, didn't get their championships because it was LeBron James's time. Utah didn't get championships because it was Michael Jordan's time. Is it Giannis's time? Right? Like in the East, if he runs through the whole East and wins another championship, the NBA is going to start looking like, like there's the next really great one. So the fun thing for me about this season, if Golden State doesn't take it, is parity. Like it feels like
100%.
anyone, and that is so exciting as an NBA fan.
Yeah, I've been like jacked about that for a while. I've said a bunch that I feel like the Raptors sort of like broke the wheel of Golden State and that their hold on the NBA. And I'm totally into the redemption of Golden State as well. I feel like one thing I really like about this team is it's kind of back to the
OG Golden State Warriors,
and
which
like
were
Jordan
actually
Poole,
fun.
Kuminga, and like
I hated the Durant Warriors. I'm very that camp. We don't have to do that now. That's like a August episode.
I mean, things were bleak. They were so good that they kind of made, I don't know, they made half the league not try. And I think that's not happening now, which is exciting. But yeah, there's all these amazing sleeper narratives. Like, how about I mean, I'm not a big Miami guy, but like if it's Kyle versus Chris Paul in the finals, it would just be like watching like two old men. Like it's like everyone has to go home and these guys are gonna just like have an arm wrestle. Like I don't know. It would be it would be the best chess match. Like and then yeah, I think the Giannis thing is key. Like to me, that's one of the least talked about narratives. It's like I've been a big proponent of like this guy's been the best player in the league for some time, and I think there's sort of this bouncing back and forth between other stars, but it's like I don't know. I mean, he might have figured something out, and if he can get past the Celtics without Middleton, then it's sort of like watch out.
Yeah, and to be fair to them, because you know, we are Toronto people. We have feelings about Boston. Mm-hmm. It is kind of interesting to me to see where the Boston Celtics trajectory has fully taken them with this core. Because I actually think that if they ended up being the team that takes it, now are you looking at all those teams that it's like, yeah, LA, try to put together your super teams. Brooklyn, try to put together your super teams. Yep. That core has been together through a lot. First round exits, not making the playoffs, making the conference finals. If they find a way to take it, it's like you're now looking at maybe the era where teams build teams. You know what I mean? And really go through and take their lumps. Because I didn't think that was a team that I didn't think was going to be as good as they were really late in the season, and especially right now. They look,
man, yeah.
Like, you know, like they don't look like they're going to be a pushover.
Many a times, and and I've been wrong. And also, like Marcus Smart, I mean, that's a guy I slandered so much, and he's straight up amazing. So you know, I'm gonna try and bury that opinion through the annals of time. You know, like I want people to forget I ever said that Marcus Smart is not great because he's awesome.
I recall Marcus Smart and comparing his flops to a Dancing with the Stars audition tape.
Nice, great comparison.
It's one of my hot Marcus Smart takes I remember having. And I think it was just like he was very Kyle-esque, but we were still rolling with Kyle. So it was like we can't have like it just I think that made me more that made me more anti-Marcus Smart. But yeah, you guys are absolutely right. And like that series, the Milwaukee Bucks Boston Celtics series, I have not been able to call that series which way it's going to go. I think it's been absolutely wild. Like I was really impressed with the way Boston adjusted in game 2. It really feels like it's a Giannis versus everybody scenario, even though he's like the nicest guy and he would never like wear that. But I mean, they don't have a big 3 in Milwaukee. That's a big 1. And I just, it would be so great if they were back-to-back champs.
Yeah.
I think they're actually the most disrespected champions ever. I think they're more disrespected than the Raptors championship, to be honest. Yeah, I think people forget they even won. Like, people absolutely forget they even won a championship. But it is just, I don't know. Like, I'm a big believer in Giannis. I agree. I think he's been the best player in the league for a while now. But I just don't know about the rest of that team. Can Giannis just do it on his own? Because I really feel like he's doing it on his own.
Yeah, I mean,
that might be a little disrespectful.
Well, I'll give some love to Drew Holiday, who's like talking about disrespected players. It's like that guy just like, I mean, there was a
play. No, I'm just kidding. I just felt like disrespecting him more.
There was this play where he like posted up Al Horford and scored, and I was like, what? Like he's just one of those guys who's like he has like
he had a great game 1. I think
he's awesome, and you know. I don't know. Their drop defense with Brook Lopez, like, man, Brook Lopez, like, talk about a guy that has aged well. Like, man, he used to be
completely changed his game,
like a focal scorer guy, and now he's this very specific offense, and he's just a very important part of that team. Bobby Portis is pretty great, like, but yeah, I do agree that Giannis is. It's not necessarily like the, you know, Smart, Brown and Tatum scenario. Like, I mean, Middleton also is he's not part of the series, but that guy's just like he's like the Durant that nobody cares about. Like he's just an ISO king, but he's kind of a boring interview, so people are like next. But he's awesome, man. Like I mean,
he puts up 10 or 15 more points a game, and then he's like Kawhi. in terms of the way that he's boring, but you have to interview him because you're like, well, but you putting up so much numbers, like we can't ignore you. You know what I mean? But he's also figured it out throughout the playoffs, and I completely agree with you. I think Drew Holiday is one of their more underrated pieces, and I definitely don't think they get that ship last year without him. He is such a key piece to what they do and how they do it, especially in those like late game scenarios. Like he's great. He's great. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, quickly too, because it feels like we've touched on everyone else in the playoffs. The team that we just lost to, the other narrative is that the process works if they end up making it, right? If the Sixers end up somehow figuring it out and getting past Kyle, somehow getting past a really strong, team on either side of that draw, if Milwaukee or Boston take it, and then winning the finals, the process works. The whole build-up.
You jumped so many leaps right now, but that's fine. We can we went from the Bucks to the 76ers and how the process works in like 30 seconds. I love it. I love you. This was a topic that we just naturally segued into.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go, Cathryn. Go.
I mean, I'm not a believer in the 76ers. I'm not a believer in the process. I do think Joel Embiid's injury right now absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
I felt terrible. It's not great. Joel Embiid's injury was going to be our next topic, and how we feel about it as Raptors fans. We cheered and we didn't know. And then Jack Armstrong was like, he deserved it because of the airplane thing. But then Pascal Siakam actually apologized immediately after the game and told him like he didn't mean that. And he said he felt terrible about it. And so that elbow wasn't actually related to what Joel Embiid was actually doing on the court after all, and that it wasn't intentional. Some of the 76ers fans are saying like Siakam should get a game, like he should be suspended a game next season for it. I mean, it's a regular season game, so it's lower stakes. But yeah, I feel terrible about his injury. Absolutely. I want to see a healthy 76ers lose to the Miami Heat, so we can confirm that the process doesn't work. I hate that they can use this injury as an excuse, but I just I don't want to believe in what they did. I think it's bad for basketball, and I think if it works, then it just puts the league in a really bad spot.
Well, and it's also interesting too, because even as I say the process works, when you go back and look at what the process is, even if it does work, teams being like, that's the recipe for success. It kind of reminds me, taking it to like another sport for a second, but I think it was Brian Burke with the Leafs when they were trying to talk about like, how do you get like Pittsburgh? And he's like, oh, how do I get lucky and get 2 first-round picks and end up having to draft 2 generational players and losing on purpose to get, is that a strategy for success? Of course it's not. And look at how long that process would take. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's continue to lose. Guys, I got the strategy. Let's lose for 15 years. And maybe in the 7th year of those 15 years, we draft a generational player, and then we lose more, but then we finally get good enough to win once.
Yeah, it's right? Not. Yeah, for me, it's like there's a few exceptions where it has quote unquote worked. The San Antonio Spurs tanked 1 year and got Tim Duncan. I'm trying to think. There's a few other examples that I'm suddenly blanking on, but it's like, I mean, even like with the Raptors, like the Tampa season didn't work, but then we got Scotty Barnes. But that's 1 year. It's not multiple years. It's not like what OKC is doing, where they're just like hijacking draft picks. And I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with all those picks. They're not going to be able to pay all of those top picks when they finally do decide to draft some and keep some players. So it just doesn't make sense to me. And yeah, I'm just echoing what you're saying essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like part of what's never talked about is with the process is just like culture killing. So like, San Antonio, they didn't kill their culture to get Duncan. The Raptors, we didn't OKC and Orlando tanked harder than we did that year. we still like
Yeah.
played hard, and you know, we had so many unfortunate events, and like, yeah, of course we rested Kyle, and like we didn't try desperately to win or make the play in. But that to me is totally different than, you know, shutting down Shai Gilgeous-Alexander like mid-season every year. You know, guy's 23 or 24. It's like, what's going on there? And
Yeah.
you know, like, yeah, if you go through the process, it's like GMs were fired, coaches were fired, players who were fantastic were traded for, you know, just constantly kicking the can as a strategy is just brutal. You know, it's sort of it's like, it's not fun. And I think there's a reason that Adam Silver and like the league office, they try to change the draft odds, right? Because they're like, this is horrible. And it's just not, you know, it's part of the reason for the play-in too, right? You want to incentivize, you know, you'd rather have like 4 or 5 teams tanking than like 11 because it's just bad. Like, it's not entertaining when, you know, I think there was a couple games this year where, you know, Detroit or OKC, like they're up at the half, and then it's like, you know, all of a sudden, like Detroit just like doesn't play Jeremy Grant in the second half. And it's like, kind of, I don't know. It's, I get having the long view, and you got to try to game the system in whatever way you can, but also you have to honor like this idea of being competitive, in my opinion.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's why I really knew confidently coming into the season that the Raptors were going to be okay, because they have people within, from top to bottom in the organization. But even if I'm just talking about players on that bench, Fred VanVleet doesn't want to. Cathryn, you and I talked about this. Fred don't want to be no lottery team. Fred wants to win. If Fred was like, "Oh, we doing the lottery for 3 years? Trade me." I think Fred would be like, he'd be like, "Get me out of here," right? And like the notion that you don't do that to your, it also helps elevate your development of other players, because you are instilling winning in them. So players that are not drafted nearly as high as some of these other players that go to OKC and Sacramento and these other teams are getting the opportunity to play competitive minutes with people who care about winning, and therefore that ups their developmental game on all fronts. So yeah, I fully agree with you both.
Speaking of that, let's move on to our Raptors Homer Moment. Obviously our season is over, but we got an amazing press conference from Masai Ujiri. Matthew, I saw you earlier this week posting mad love for Masai, talking about how the Lakers dream. We all dream. We all want the best things in the world. And they can keep dreaming. Matthew, what did you think of Masai's postseason presser?
The only thing I needed was for somebody to start playing "I Dreamed a Dream" from Les Mis in the background when he was speaking. It was
the Susan Boyle version.
Yes,
Susan Boyle version.
Wow.
It was so fantastic, and one of the reasons why I love Masai, and I hope he never leaves this franchise. Are you kidding me? Absolutely, that's what he should have said, right? It's nice to have dreams. It's great to have goals. Have 100%, them, right? But like, if as a Raptors fan and a homer, it's one of the things that I've loved the most about this We the North era, especially in these last few particular years, where it feels like fans will crap on a team, but it feels like the media then also doesn't pay attention to the Raptors, doesn't really have any talking points about them, except when the offseason comes and now it's time for these franchises that are supposedly rich and we're supposedly poverty are trying to get fresh, and they're running to us, right? Like Nick Nurse is a head coach on a team that has success and is already employed. Where the heck do you think he's going? Because it's Los Angeles? Miss me with that. Like,
yeah, we're going to get into the Nick Nurse stuff more in our Hottie Highlight of the week. But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, like, so from Masai to throw that gauntlet down and be like, it's nice to have dreams. Beautiful. Like chef's kiss. Yeah, you know, like you can go after Adrian Griffith if you want to go after somebody, which I also love that he shouted out the black coaches that are in development within his staff and said, boost them up, right? If you want to come get fresh off of somebody, you might be able to have one of these. And we can start talking about the Toronto Raptors coaching tree that drops branches in other teams and starts to get everybody else good. But you're not coming after our assets as if we're just your G League team, Lakers. That's not how this works. And I know that that's not necessarily coming from the organization. It's more coming from LA media. But it is just one of those things to hopefully finally just be like, stop it. Enough with this. Like,
yeah, well, it comes from Lakers entitlement, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think the more sure we are of ourselves, and I mean, sometimes I feel sorry for Masai because he comes in and he's like, okay, I want to win in Toronto, and believe in yourselves. And like the immediate Toronto rebuttal is, but what if we don't want to believe in ourselves? And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. This guy believes in you. Like, you need to look inward. You need to never suggest like, trading Pascal for scraps ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's sort of this constant thing where, the city's just like not confident. And Masai's like, I don't know what to tell you. I already won a championship. I was never going to leave unless, the Rogers CEO, like, force me out with this weirdness and like, weird, like, potentially like racial innuendos with so it was reminiscent of like Phil Jackson posse stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like, because he called like what Masai's like driver a bodyguard, and it got weird. But like, if we can retain Masai, he gets it. He's like, listen, I'm not going to talk about it, but I want to bring a WNBA team here. Like Masai's so focused, and he talked about the African League, and it's just like this guy is able to wade through all of Toronto's insecurities and just like punch us with good stuff constantly. And it's just sometimes I feel like it's a blessing we don't deserve, but other times I feel like it's a narrative battle where the lack of confidence just it needs to fizzle away.
I wish he was my life coach.
Oh man, he's like, he's all of our life coach. Like it's crazy. Like
it's something to aspire to, right? Like
it really is.
Yeah.
Like he's just such an incredible personality. And like, I mean, by the way, for whatever reason, Kyle Kuzma is like just like a nonstop Raptor stan now. And I love it.
He's trying to like get on our team, man. He's trying to get on our team.
He gets it. I know he might be.
I mean, I'm down with. I would not be upset if Kuzma was on our team. I don't know who we would have to like lose. So I'm not like going there, but I'm just saying generally, if Kuzma was on our team, that would be nice.
Yeah.
I will say this: when you think about the year that Masai has had, right, dealing, post Tampa, right, coming home, the horrendous contract negotiation that he went through, that we learned after the fact was about the stupid Rogers kids not wanting to pay him and not seeing his value and realizing he was living through a real life episode of Succession. And that's how much he wanted to stay here, that he actually put up with that BS. Because I think a lot of people would have been like, screw this, I'll just go somewhere else where I'm more respected and valued financially, but then finally got paid. Before he even had his contract set up, drafted Scotty Barnes against everyone else's, Jalen Suggs picks, ends up drafting the rookie of the year, and the team ends up 5th in the East in a rebuild year. It's been an incredible year for Masai. Like to the point where I'm like, is he not like I don't remember what the front office award is called, but is he not like the basketball president of the year? Like, I think
Executive
there's a real case to
right?
be executive of the year. Thank you.
Yeah.
I prefer president of the year. That's so silly.
Chairman of the year.
Yeah. But it's just like, to me, it's like, that's a hell of a year for Masai. Like, he did really, really well. Like, I mean, I was so nervous last summer when those contract negotiations were being extended and I didn't know what was going on and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, rest assured, once again, we're all in a great place with him. And, I think I'm not alone in this. We all kind of value him as like the most valuable Raptor, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's incredible. I think, it said everything that when the dust kind of settled, that there were, premiership and like big time soccer teams courting him. Like I've always said, like he doesn't look at like Washington and he's like, oh, maybe I'll be the GM of Washington. Like, if Masai wants to go somewhere,
the weather is 5 degrees warmer.
Yeah, like if he wants to go somewhere, it's like he's gonna take Adam Silver's job. He'll maybe run the African League. Like he sees the forest for the trees. He's patient, and it's just we're so blessed as fans that he doesn't like hear the noise.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, seriously.
I agree.
The tightest. It's what I've always been asking for, right? Like, and I feel like a lot of Raptors fans too. When we used to joke and say, we want to be Spurs North.
Yeah,
that has always been attractive to me, not necessarily because of the winning is a part of it, but it's the culture and the way the organization is run to be good consistently for years. We don't have to win back-to-back championships. But if every time a team sees us, they go, oh, damn, oh, crap, we're in trouble, I'm happy with that. Because more often than not, you're going to find yourself in a position where you can win a championship. And we're there, like, yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And like, and sorry, Cathryn, I just want to say, like, I feel like, the Spurs are going to be good before OKC. Just watch.
Yeah.
Because of culture.
I love that. Yeah, sorry. I just know that Matthew's got a heart out. So we got to wrap this up. We got to talk a little bit about Nick Nurse. He also addressed the Lakers rumors. He said, he's here. He's contracted to be here for another 2 years. He said he would, if he was a free agent, he would play here. I think he tried to say that he's not going anywhere the best way he could without sacrificing his own future leverage.
Mm-hmm.
So I was happy with that. He is with Clutch Sports. So there's that whole BS. Maybe he was even a little in on it. I think he just knew it was just like the big compliment that it actually is. And I think Nick Nurse loves being a celebrity. That's my big take on it. If I'm saying it super quick, Freddie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think like, it's up to Canada. Like, let's not be insecure. Let's put Nick on all the shows. You know what I mean? He's already been on like Murdoch Mystery. He's already rocking with Jason Priestley.
Yeah, I gotta write him a role on Run the Burbs. That's what
get him on Run the Burbs. Let's get him on like Hudson Rex. Like, like let's get this guy. Make sure he gets to see it all.
Yeah. Let's get him on Digstown. Let's get
man. All of it. Let's find a way.
Yeah.
Guys,
Nurse, baby.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. Matthew, tell us real quick about your play and where people can find you on the internets.
Yes, people can find me with the tag at Mr. MGB. Oh, sorry, at It's Mr. MGB. That's ITSMRMGB on Instagram and on Twitter. And the show that I am in is called Is God Is, written by Alicia Harris at Canadian Stage, co-pro with Obsidian Theater and Necessary Angel, Berkeley Street Theater. First preview is today, May 6th. We open on May 11th. We close on May 22nd. Go online and get your tickets now.
Amazing. And Freddie, let us know what you're up to and where people can find you on the internet.
Yeah, well, let me just say to everyone, I've seen Matthew act, and it's absolutely it's mesmerizing. He's incredible on stage, and before we ever met or podcasted together, me and my wife saw a play he was in, and it was absolutely incredible. So go check him out for sure. Check out the play. You can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at Freddie Rivas or at Freddie Noel Rivas on Insta, and check out my pod on Raptors Republic, Confederacy Dunks, and
thanks so much everyone for tuning in. Freddie and I also have a WNBA podcast called The Pickup, which is available on the Sonar Network. We just dropped our season preview episode this week, so check that out. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at itsme_Cathryn, spelled CATHRYN. Thank you so much, and we'll check you back next week. Bye.
Thank you.
See ya.